87% of high school students in the U.S. are getting less than the recommended 8.5 to 9.5 hours of sleep on school nights. Dr. Judith Owens, a member of the American Academy of Pediatrics, states, "Chronic sleep loss in children and adolescents is one of the most common public health issues in the U.S. today." There is a health crisis facing many teenagers of the millennial generation: sleep deprivation. A maelstrom of sleep-deprived adolescents is flowing into high school and ebbing out with an overload of extracurriculars, jobs, community service, and academics. In 42 states, 75% to 100% of public schools start before 8:30 a.m. The American Academy of Pediatrics has realized the malady has put the nation's public health at stake. On August 25, 2014, the AAP released a new policy statement recommending middle and high schools delay the start of class to 8:30 a.m. or later. Start school later? Medical professionals have united to champion the solution to tackling the insufficient sleep that adolescents are coping with in school. Stop. The idea of just pushing back the time when the school bell rings is simple enough, right? Why not? The Center for Disease Control and Prevention and federal groups have evaluated the prevalence and effects of the lack of sleep. In a study conducted by the U.S. Department of Education of an estimated 37,000 public schools, the average start time was 8:03 a.m. To keep up with early start of school and avoid tardiness, high school students on average are not meeting the recommended 8.5 to 9.5 hours of sleep they need to function properly. It's not just the doctors that hold this view.
Right now I'm like, woo, I could go for forever, but tomorrow I'll be like,
classes I'm trying not to fall asleep in.
Normally it's between 1 and 3.
I could get anywhere between 2 or 8 hours of sleep.
Sleep deprivation isn't just from the overload on work. Adolescents are at the peak of the puberty roller coaster during their high school years. During this time, puberty alters the circadian rhythm of adolescents, making it, according to the National Sleep Foundation, natural to not be able to fall asleep before 11 p.m. How important is sleep? As the CDC puts it, obtaining adequate sleep is important for achieving optimal health. Sleep is essential to human vitality. Without it, many things go awry. Lack of sleep leads to acne and other skin issues, aggressive behavior, skewed concentration, limitations in learning and listening, illness, and drowsy driving. A study was even done that observed the teen crash rates in neighboring cities in Southeast Virginia with different high school start times, and they found that the crash rate for the high school with the earlier start time was significantly higher than the high school with the later start time. According to the Washington Post, driving while sleep deprived equates to driving with a BAC of 0.08%. AAP has responded that napping, caffeine, catching up on sleep during the weekends is only a temporary solution. A concrete way to preserve the public health gets down to changing the infrastructure of the education system. Arne Duncan, U.S. Secretary of Education, stated, "A later start to the school day could help boost students' academic performance and reduce tardiness and absenteeism." Dr. Kyla Wallstrom performed a study funded by the CDC on the effect of later school start times on performance of teenagers and found that standardized test scores and overall GPAs increased when the students were getting the recommended hours of sleep. The Wallstrom study also found that sleep-deprived students reported higher depression symptoms, greater use of caffeine, and a higher risk for substance abuse. She demonstrated that melatonin secretions begin later in the evening as children get older, which is called a phase shift. Because of this, she explains that it is logical to bump the start times to accommodate this phase shift. There are many that argue the health of the students should be the top priority. U.S. Secretary of Education Duncan affirms, "Our common sense tells us that sleepy students don't do well in school, but the research also exists to back it up." Delaying the time when school starts for high schoolers is not as simple as it seems. A prescription from the AAP hasn't had the momentum to start the changing of school times. What many are realizing is that the core issue with AAP proposition is tackling adolescent sleep directly from the standpoint of remediating school systems and scheduling, when there are other solutions available. Many parents continue to remain in opposition because they feel there are factors not being considered by the officials. Some parents point out the fact that they rely on their child to contribute to the family income. According to a National Education Association article, on average, working youth contribute almost 22% to the family budget, while approximately 10% of these teen workers contribute more than half. These children work after school in order to keep the family afloat, but with shifting the start and end of school to later times, their work hours could be cut down. With less work hours, the family income will be too low and it will add stress to the whole family. Another drawback to swapping the bus schedules is that younger children are returning from school earlier, while older children are returning later. For many parents who are required to stay at work for a set time, they depend on the older children to be home before the younger siblings to take care of them. But with later high school start times, the younger children will be home alone. Another major concern is how high school athletic schedules would function within this change. Certain sports, such as golf, require daylight, and therefore these teams would not be able to practice post-daylight savings. Something else to consider is that if not all high schools change their times at once, then coaches will have trouble scheduling games with different schools. Another thing to remember is that many coaches are parents too, and therefore many of them do not have the resources to stay later in the day. Many families continue to have reservations with changing the time, especially those with younger children. With the same buses used for all school grades, parents are concerned that with later high school start times, their younger children's elementary school start time will be earlier to accommodate the new school bus schedule. This will force young children to wait for the bus in the dark. Parents already become apprehensive when they leave their child at the bus stop, but leaving the child in the dark could make it even worse. Parents in the school district of Wayzata have started a petition against later high school start times out of concern for the elementary school children.
A lot of parents have voiced concerns over bus stop safety, being in the dark, and elementary kids tending to be a little more wily than high school kids, at the bus stop.
These concerned parents want their voices to be heard and feel the sleep deprivation of the teenagers can be avoided in other ways without causing all of these logistical issues.
Starting a little bit early, they get home earlier and can get on with their homework and then go on to their soccer activities.
Despite the support coming from the students themselves, there are other factors such as cost that could deter school boards from making the switch.
But it is certainly not a one-size-fits-all issue that should be addressed at the state level.
Dr. Marcel Duray, a sleep specialist, agrees that there are alternative solutions to the sleep deprivation of teens. For many teens, checking social media, texting, or surfing the web on their phones before bed is the norm. But a key step to tackling sleep deprivation starts with turning off electronic devices an hour or two before bed to allow sleepiness to set in. Melatonin, a hormone, is produced before rest to cause that sleepy feeling, and its secretion can actually be suppressed by the blue light produced from electronic devices, keeping teens up late at night. Along with this, he suggests avoiding exercise and mental stimulation right before going to bed. Keeping the brain and/or body active also has the effect of suppressing feelings of lethargy. Dr. Judith Owens, a member of the American Academy of Pediatrics, agrees that teenagers need more sleep and suggests cutting things out of their schedules. She says, "Don't give them so many things to do that they can't go to bed before midnight." Furthermore, experts explain that the circadian rhythm can be taught in a sense. If the body is forced to rest at 10 or 11, then the circadian rhythm will shift to accommodate that new schedule. In order to be effective, Duray explains the schedule should be kept up over the weekends. What we are seeing here is starting school later is not the only way to solve this detrimental sleep deprivation facing thousands of adolescents across the nation. Yet, when given this generous list of solutions, why are students today still having to sacrifice their sleep? Does waiting to satisfy the opinions of everyone weigh more than preserving the health of our posterity? The debate continues between parents, medical professionals, and the students themselves whether or not to push back school start times. Policy changes are daunting tasks for the school board, and parents have reservations about the effects it will have on their day-to-day lives. But some feel it will be a necessary change for the overall health of the teenagers. So what will be the final decision? Only time will tell.